25 years. I still feel the same. Only the calendar went by.
Jason Newsted signed the death warrant for his own bank account. He voluntarily walked away from a cut of an empire worth $300 million. By 2001, Metallica wasn't just a band anymore. It was a hit factory, a machine printing cash faster than the US Mint. From the outside, the fans saw an idol sitting on top of the world. But the reality? Jason spent 14 years inside a meat grinder. They wiped his bass tracks off the tapes, and they systematically dismantled the man. Most people would kill for his seat on that private jet. But Jason fled the scene of the crime, while the others were busy counting the loot. It kicked off in 1986. After the tragic death of Cliff Burton, the vacancy for the bass player in Metallica became the golden ticket for the entire metal world. Jason Newsted pulled that ticket. On paper, it read like the ultimate rock and roll fantasy. A young fan gets drafted into his favorite band. The press spun stories about a new beginning and healing through music. But the guys hauling cables and rigging lights in the dim arena corridors saw a different picture. The roadies loading gear at 4 a.m. knew the score. This wasn't a tour. It was a penal colony for one inmate. The official band biography calls this period bonding, or testing his mettle. That's a boring lie. Ask the waiters in the high-end restaurants who stared at the receipts in horror. They saw Hetfield and Ulrich order thousands of dollars worth of oysters and champagne, only to point a finger at the rookie. He's buying. That wasn't a joke. That was dominance. It was a shakedown. Hotel maids would find Jason's mattress thrown out the window and his personal belongings scattered down the hallway. The band wasn't just messing around. They were systematically erasing his identity. They even stripped him of his name. To them, he wasn't Jason. He was just New Kid, a nameless function, a jukebox with a pulse that was expected to play tight and keep its mouth shut until spoken to. The word on the street was dark. Insiders whispered that James Hetfield wasn't looking for a musician. He was looking for a punching bag to take out his anger over losing Cliff. And Jason fit the role perfectly. He took it. He smiled for the cameras. He thought if he walked through this hell, he'd eventually become one of the guys. He was dead wrong. The doors to the country club were locked tight against him from day one. They just forgot to tell him. In this racket, betrayal comes with a hefty price tag. And loyalty? It usually isn't worth a dime. Jason paid for his success with his sanity. But for you, a front row seat to this train wreck costs just one click. Subscribe to the channel if this story hits a nerve. It's the best way to tell the suits that we remember the truth the record labels are trying to bury. Done? Good. Now, let's head back into the studio. I'm about to show you the smoking gun they left out in plain sight for millions to see. If the hazing in the hotels was just frat boy sadism, the 1988 album, And Justice for All, was the crime scene. It remains the loudest open secret in metal history, hidden in plain sight. Millions of fans bought the wax, dropped the needle, and froze. The sound was dry, harsh, and dead as the Mojave. People were twisting knobs on their stereos, checking their wiring, convinced they had blown a woofer. But the gear was fine. The soul of the music was broken. The question hanging in the air was, where the hell is the bass? The official party line? They claimed the frequencies clashed, and the bass just got lost in the mix. We've been fed this technical garbage about mixing errors for decades. But the veterans sitting behind the boards know the score. At Metallica's level, there are no technical errors. There are only orders. Insiders describe a scene in the studio that looked less like a creative session and more like an execution. The story goes that Lars Ulrich turned to the engineer with a crystal-clear command. Turn the bass down until you can barely hear it. And when the engineer complied, Lars added, now drop it another 5 decibels. The sound guys tried to push back, said it was insanity, but Lars was stone cold. It wasn't a mix, it was a sentence. Lars wasn't mixing a track, he was wiping a man off the map. They told Jason without saying a word. You can stand on stage, you can bleed with us on tour, but your voice? It doesn't exist here. Picture that moment. Jason puts the record on, waiting to hear his triumph, and hears a vacuum. He wasn't just poorly recorded. He was left on the cutting room floor. It was a public castration of a musician, documented on 8 million sold copies. You think that's paranoia? Then why didn't Jason scream bloody murder back then? Because the walls of a golden cage are soundproof. You either sit quietly on the velvet cushion and cash the check, or you open your mouth and lose it all. Jason chose the check, but that silence started rotting him from the inside out. By 2001, Jason realized that a fat bank account doesn't plug the hole in your soul. The silence Lars engineered on the album now flooded his entire life. He needed to breathe. He needed to play music where he could actually be heard. He found an escape hatch, an innocent, psychedelic rock project called Echobrain. It wasn't a threat to the throne. It was just a hobby, a breath of fresh air. Management heard the demos and said, "This is solid. We can push this." But they forgot to kiss the ring of the dawn. When James Hetfield got wind of it, he didn't pat his buddy on the back. He took it as high treason. In his book, Metallica wasn't a band, it was a cult. And in a cult, you don't get to have a personal life. Hetfield went full puppet master. He yanked the strings and strong-armed management into killing support for Echobrain. He wanted to strangle that baby in the crib. Officially, they spun it as protecting the Metallica brand. But the assistants who saw James's face in that moment say it was pure, unchecked control freakism. The texts listening through the drywall describe a conversation that froze the room. When Jason tried to fight for his right to create, Hetfield allegedly dropped a line that felt colder than a morgue slab. "In this family, we don't share loyalty. When you marry Metallica, you don't keep a mistress on the side. You give us everything. You're either 100% with us, or you're dead to us." That was the come to Jesus moment. Jason realized he wasn't a partner. He was a prop in someone else's puppet show. Hetfield wanted him to stand in the corner and wait until someone pulled his string. For Jason, that was the final straw. He could stomach the hazing. He swallowed the erased bass. But telling a musician he can't play, that was an assassination of the spirit. He realized if he stayed, he'd end up just another rich, dead mannequin. January 17, 2001. Just another band meeting in a hotel suite. But when Jason Newsted walked in, the air turned arctic. He wasn't there to listen this time. The official press release blamed private and personal reasons and the physical damage I have done to myself. That's a beautiful spin. But industry vets know corporate code when they see it. It's a polite way of saying, "I can't breathe your air anymore," without breaching the contract. Jason didn't scream. He didn't smash the furniture or beg for respect. He did something far more terrifying for control freaks like Hetfield and Ulrich. He simply cut the power. He looked at the empire he helped build, looked at the millions of dollars sitting on the table, and effectively said, "That's a wrap." In that second, the hit factory came to a screeching halt. You could hear the brakes lock up all over Los Angeles. Lars and James were used to treating people like disposable parts, like batteries that you drain and replace. But they never expected the battery to rip itself out of the circuit. It was a unilateral act of liberation. Jason stood up and walked out the door, leaving them in total, deafening silence. He finally erased them from his map. That day, he lost his status as a member of the biggest band on Earth. But he reclaimed the one thing they tried to steal for 14 years, his name. He walked out of that golden cage a pauper by billionaire standards, but for the first time in a decade and a half, he was a free man. After the door clicked shut behind him, the hit factory didn't just stumble, it imploded. Metallica spent the next 2 years in a nosedive. Therapy sessions, tears, and a public breakdown caught on tape in some kind of monster. With their designated whipping boy gone, Hetfield and Ulrich were forced to look in the mirror. And they couldn't stomach what stared back. History has issued its verdict. Jason was right. Back then, critics tapped their temples, saying he was crazy to walk away from a gold mine. But look at the hard facts. He didn't lose a seat in the band. He saved his own neck. While the remaining members were left hanging on hooks in the butcher shop, getting carved up by fans and the press, Jason took back the wheel. He proved that self-respect is a currency worth more than any stack of platinum records. Here's the lesson. Sometimes, the only way to win a game with the devil isn't to place a bet, it's to flip the table and walk out. Jason Newsted paid for his freedom with his career. And looking at what this industry has turned into today, that was a hell of a bargain.